my colleague Slide's just getting our slideshow going, I'd like to make a start. So yeah, I've been really looking forward to this opportunity to present to you, and my main sort of objective this morning is actually to convey some of the enthusiasm and energy and some of the momentum that we had on this recent project, which has just gone live in the past few months, and which I thought was a really successful process, really enjoyable and successful process that
sorry, mate.
yeah, I'm looking forward to giving you some details about it. And I guess being a case study, the main objective is actually to give you a bit of a glimpse behind the scenes at some of the things that happen at the relationship level with the client, but also at the technical level, some of the ways that we use Drupal for the project, and hopefully this will help to sort of demystify a few things for you and actually getting you looking forward to some of the technical aspects, as well as perhaps being fascinated by them or even a little bit intimidated by them, say if you're heading into your first Drupal project. So yeah, as soon as we get our slides up.
Keep going.
Yeah.
I think PowerPoint's crushing, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
We'll try and work around that.
Yeah. They were up at one point, but just not on full screen. So
Yep.
yeah, if we can just leave it like that, and I'll just
Yep,
jump through.
cool.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I'm actually in the driver's seat, and yeah, looking forward to sort of taking you through a bit of a journey around the build on this site, and at least show you some of the more technical, more technical points of interest along the way. So yeah, just before I get started, I guess a few sort of thank yous at the very beginning. First of all, of course, thank you for coming along and for being part of government in one way or another, whether you're a provider or an actual government employee. And actually, could we get a show of hands for people working in government here in Canberra? Or from, yeah, so vast majority of you. And from elsewhere around Australia? From Victoria, New South Wales, or further afield? Yeah? Okay. And any developers in the room? Right. Okay, so it's quite a mix. That's perfect. So yeah, I guess one of the first things I wanted to sort of say was about the Drupal community. Some of you have probably met some of us already. So some of you have probably met some of us already. And but yeah, we're a really big association. We're actually like a big international organisation, and there's a lot of expertise at our end, and some individuals that I'd like to point out first would be Krell and Chicks, and some other companies. And I'm actually feeling a bit nervous. So yeah, I haven't really done this a lot before. So yeah. Okay.
We're blooding you, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Better give Josh a clap.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I guess the slideshow at the beginning sort of caught me off guard a bit, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I can sort of keep it on track for you, and I've been, like I said, really looking forward to it. So yeah, I think we can still get into it. Okay. So yeah, I think what I'll do is kind of jump straight in and start to look at the project a bit in detail. So the things we're wanting to talk about is actually the platform architecture and the, some of the details inside there, but also the versatile sort of range of content types that were used, and the editorial workflows. And yeah, I've actually got a little bit...
Do you want to do a bit of an introduction of the project?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'd really like you to jump in.
We're going to tag team this a little bit.
Yeah.
So I want to start. Josh has summarised some of the aspects of this site where we felt were kind of pretty crucial to the value that we delivered in this case. So Manningham are a large council in Melbourne, in the east of Melbourne, and they come to us with the typical sort of problems that a council would come to in terms of wanting to put a whole bunch of different content, the typical events, the locations. They've got they want to display all the parks. They want to have the lost pets page and all that sort of stuff. And I wanted to maybe start by talking a little bit about the engagement, which turned out they're very typical for a lot of council engagements, is where their budget didn't match their requirements. So we actually spent a couple of months with them going through the tender process of ultimately getting the budget halving the budget for them, which really was, it's really hard to talk about that, but part of the engagement was really about working with the client to reduce the complexity of their requirements down to something that we could actually deliver for their budget. And so so we're looking here at the end result. So I welcome any questions about that aspect of the engagement later. It's not something I can talk to in detail, but it's definitely part of the job. Shall I just work through your slides?
Yeah, and I'll sort of join you a little as well.
So with Technocrat, we tend to try and go for that really agile team environment. So when we're working with a client, we go for this three-way relationship where we've got the client, the project management and development. We're all with sort of equal contact with each other. So we never really ever put a project manager between the client and the developer. So with this comes a lot of like responsibility for actually kind of delivering outcome, because the responsibility sort of gets spread a little bit. So something the developer might say, the project manager might not be across it, and you're probably all familiar with that kind of problem. But it's really the only way we could meet their budget at the same time, because if we actually worked through them in terms of their strict 4,000 items in their spreadsheet and did them one by one, we were never ever going to deliver, because the project manager, filtering those all through the project manager and to the developer was never going to work. So, for example, when we started the project, and this is something that I'm the development director at Technocrat, so run the Drupal team. The one thing that I really try and push in any new engagement, any large, say, CMS build for, say, a council, is to allow the developers to have 2 to 4 weeks or a sprint or two where they're actually building out platform, and they're not actually ticking things off of a requirements list. Because if they start ticking things off a requirements list, they start getting into the detail of what they need to deliver. Whereas if you give them 2 to 4 weeks of just platform build, they can deliver 80% of the requirements, and the rest is the tail.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And so then at that point, it gives you this opportunity to get all of your resources in place, so technical resources, but also building up a team at our end and getting developers into the right roles. And then I guess most importantly, you're building a relationship with the client at that point and able to spend time with them, identify their strengths and see where they're really coming from. And importantly, do some groundwork on what you're actually wanting to build, because we get really busy in the middle and towards the end of projects, and we're doing back-to-back government projects now. So then you really need a bit of lead time in the early days of a project to check out the new technologies or new methods and new approaches that you might want to sort of bring to bear. And I mean, in the case of our most recent project, that was checking out quite technical things to do with managing files, and to do with accessibility in the government context and this type of thing, and also to do with hosting projects on Acquia and getting a really good alignment there for best use of their resources. So so you use that lead time, and then you feel like you can really hit the road running in that first big sprint where you're starting to work on their platform and their sites. Yeah,
and then starting to tick off requirements.
Yeah.
I suppose I would assume that people recognise that I suppose it's what, from an agency point of view, we can see as a difficulty, which is working through like micromanaged requirements from a vendor. And often what I describe is it feels like the requirements have gone through all of the PAs in the organisation who have had the verbal instructions from the manager about the thing they didn't get from their class website and they want from this website. So you end up getting 1.4.6b, which is something that if you actually implemented it, you would be working against Drupal. You'd actually be having to pull things out of Drupal in order to meet that requirement of simplicity by some non-technical definition. And I guess just before we move on, the purpose of that slide, now that I've calmed down enough to be able to tell you the purpose of the slide, is actually is something that is really exciting and is really worth taking away from this talk and into your next project, which is the idea of finding a group of people who have got a really good working relationship and got a kind of an energy and an enthusiasm about what they do, and then tapping into that and being a part of it. And that is a kind of a meeting of communities between a government community and a technical community, or a publishing community, you could call us. And there's
so much potential in those relationships. And so I guess sort of the spirit of what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of energy inside these web development companies. So Previous Next, Technocrat, many other companies around Australia, Godel, who we partner with in Melbourne, and well, there are lots of us. And that thing of taking the time and building the relationships and picking up some of that enthusiasm, because it can make a really big difference when you're in the middle and towards the end of a project, to have those working relationships in place that you can then sort of use to get it over the line, to get the job done. I think it comes up on the next slide as well.
Communication.
Yeah. So then once those relationships are in place, of course, thinking about it in a bit more detail, all of the opportunities to build something that is successful and compliant and that you're satisfied with really come from within. They're a sort of a subset of the possibilities in those working relationships, and that might sort of be very natural to you, or that might sort of be something that's interesting to ponder and to take away from this. So things that I've found have been really most useful to make that work have been an emphasis on creating and sustaining these open channels of communication. And I guess in a way that's a given, working at our level, at your level in government and at our level in publishing. But you'd be surprised how often you can hear these stories about 2-week or a 1-month gap where there's just no contact with the client, clients feeling like providers have fallen off the radar and things like that. It certainly happens at the sort of small to medium business level and even at the university level, for example. But we're thinking about ways that you can make sure that doesn't happen on your project. Yep. Do you want to pick it up for a little while?
Yeah, for sure. I want to touch on one of the key strategies we used with Manningham, that when we went into negotiations in order to reduce costs, we started looking at ways to reduce risk. And one of the biggest risks that tends to happen with a large engagement is stakeholder management. We identified a key resource on the client side who actually had technical understanding of what a CMS was, at least, and what content management systems should do, having worked in different government as a contractor. And we put in one of the requirements of our tender that person would, if that person quit the organisation, that the tender would fail, like the actual delivery would fail. So we actually set up a situation where all of our communication was through that one point, and that worked surprisingly well, because what it did is it took the focus off the Drupal team to be dealing with multiple stakeholders. And when you consider Manningham, they've got 16, 20 departments, the lost animals, the rubbish, the parks and rec and so forth. So by having the single point of contact, we effectively put all of that stakeholder management onto the client. Now, a lot of people in here are clients, so that might sound like that's the vendor actually getting away with something, but really it's not, because in that situation, our stakeholder contact, our single point of contact, was the one that could actually keep a lid on things, because it was her time that they were wasting if they were wasting it, and it really allowed the developers to really focus on delivering outcomes.
And so, just picking up on that, through that relationship, and in theory, that key contact on the client side could have been interchangeable with someone else, but I guess one of the things that was really special about the project was that they understood how to kind of protect us as providers and give us the best possible opportunity to do our best work.
They knew how to play the politics.
Yeah, exactly. And so, of course, there's someone like that on every team on the client side who can kind of identify the best possible set of opportunities from the provider, and sort of make sure that there's some conduit, that there's some path ahead for that. And the way that I would describe that is in establishing what are the boundaries on our work and what are the opportunities, and where we can really put our extra work and our innovation into play. And so of course there's quite a lot that needs to happen to make that possible. Is you need to have a clear understanding about that latitude, and that there needs to be a sort of an informal understanding where you've been given room to move, but also that needs to be reflected eventually in the reporting and the documentation around the project. This is where we all take on like a really big responsibility to document and account for these things, so that they actually work in a context and can be funded and can be measured as being successful, and this type of thing. And there's a really serious side to all of that. But I guess my point and the thing that I can offer is that serious side with the accountability and the documentation should somehow be able to reflect or encapsulate what is actually just a very sort of simple understanding between a small group of individuals that you're going to be allowed to do some things in a special, innovative way and make room for that. And there are some things that you would just need to do in a very compliant and predictable way to succeed by those measures. And it's a matter of sort of being able to identify both of those and the idea that they're both sort of, well, not equally, but that they're both valuable. So that was the point of that slide.
Yep.
Anyway,
again, sorry about the clearly the PowerPoint keeps crashing, so really sorry about the size of that. I've been trying to look at a way to work around that.
Yeah, but if you can make it out. The idea was to talk about working relationships first, and then the tools that we use to facilitate those relationships, and then look at the project in more detail. I think we're going to try and sort of move through to that now. So just very briefly, the tools that I have found most useful and the ones that I would highly recommend to you to use with your developers on your project would certainly be Flowdoc or something just like it, which is like a chat program really, but it's chat with channels set up to have a sort of daily constant communication with the client, and a little bit like IRC but much better laid out. And so, and you can have multiple sort of communication channels running in there. And I have found that Flowdoc makes a world of difference to sustaining that live, real-time connection with the client. So,
yeah, can I put that in context?
Yeah.
So what we find if you've only got, say, email as your primary form of communication is that a lot of the little conversations that you have, especially if you've got a remote situation, and especially if you want to be tracking what's being said, is that you end up getting all those tiny little decisions all in email trails, and no one ever wants to start new threads, and you end up trying to remember where you had that conversation. So we for every project we do, and we encourage our clients to join us in our persistent chat program. And for us, we use Flowdoc. Another example is HipChat. And other companies use just IRC channels and so forth. And other companies use Skype a lot for the similar thing. But what happens is it moves all of those little conversations into that stream of conscious discussions. And then the email tends to be as Josh says here, tends to be the paper trail stuff where you've verbally made a decision, and you actually just need to reflect that somewhere. And so you send that email and you say, just confirming this is what we agreed in Flowdoc, or on the phone. And so what we find is that really, really opens up the communication. You've got a searchable stream of information that you can find some of those decisions in. You can tag stuff up. So if you're working with someone remotely and you want to get that real engagement, the question is, how are you chatting with those people? How are you opening up those conversation channels?
And if it's phone calls, you're constantly wishing other people were on the call. And if it's emails, you're constantly waiting for people to get back to you. And but yeah, with Flowdoc, you have a sense of it happening in a room. I mean, it's actually called a flow, but it feels like you're in a room together, just communicating in real time. So suddenly, it was worthwhile you all coming along to this talk, because we've given you this really cool recommendation, something that will make a difference to your project, which is being in real time contact with your provider. But yeah, I mean, it gets even better from there. Google Hangouts. I'm hoping that all of you, would have clearance to use that from your workplace. And if not, well, you're probably not far off it. And well, what we've found is that we've been part of that sort of bow wave of those technologies being made available to government, and it's great. So, in fact, on each project, we arrive at the point where the people we're working with are just getting permission to use Flowdoc and Google Hangouts and Gmail and these things for the first time. And they're celebrating that fact, and then we get to sort of use those toys with them, as it were. So, Google Hangouts, especially valuable, because then you can line up your team, and we have like stand-ups in the morning, and our stand-up is just a little video conference. And if you haven't done your hair, you can always just have the video switched off. The point is that you're all there together, having what's effectively a big sort of group phone call at the start of the day, just to all get on the same page. So immensely valuable. And you can sense the energy levels and the enthusiasm, and you can set out the plan for the day. So it just works really well. And then on this slide, Jira.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I think we spoke,
Yeah, so we've covered Jira, and yeah, go with it.
Yeah, so you're going to have some project management tools such as Jira. Jira being the sort where you've actually got it in the cloud and you can give people access to it. We have had some project managers come into Technocrat from project backgrounds, Microsoft Project, and running all they're wanting to generate their Gantt charts, and that transition into something like Jira. If you're not already using something online, then you want to see if you can explore that within the organisation.
Yeah, so just a quick show of hands on that one of someone who sort of, people who sort of already know the value of Jira or something like it. Yeah, so I think that's enough of you so that we can.
People who aren't allowed to use an online cloud-based project management tool because their organisation won't let them.
So, yeah, so, well, yeah. You may not be far off being allowed to move on to those things. So, yeah, we'll see. Okay, so, yeah, moving on from that and starting to get into a little bit more detail about the way we approach the build and the architecture for Manningham City Council. So, we use Acquia as the hosting provider. In fact, we partner with them on all of our projects and have found them to be a really exemplary provider. And in this case, what they're providing for the project and really taking care of a whole section of our offering is a really well configured, tuned for Drupal hosting environment with, in fact, multiple environments that we can work from to produce the project and demonstrate it and test it and deliver it and actually host it in production as well. And I've got a diagram there which is worth just briefly getting orientated with that, because what it's really showing is the idea that you have a live production environment and you have other environments sitting alongside it. And that the databases from the live production environment can be copied out into those other environments where you can use them for demonstration, testing, and this type of thing, including being able to copy them down into the local environment where web developers are working on them. And then, of course, what you're doing on your local machine is using the live database or a copy of it to emulate the site on your local machine, and then making changes to it, which get saved into the code base, and then the code base gets moved back up into the Acquia environment where it goes live. So that's the basic sort of development workflow, which you're probably familiar with. And what I'm pointing out is that Acquia is really built to facilitate that perfectly. So, highly recommended. And you can jump in and be using that set of tools completely for free, or at a sort of developer level, or at a very affordable level, and in a multi-site environment, so you can get value out of it, right up to enterprise production hosting. So, yeah.
It definitely also changed the landscape for us once Acquia started hosting in Sydney. We just didn't have. We have our own ability to host websites, and we generally use AWS in Sydney, and so once Acquia established themselves being able to host in Australia, it just opened up these government opportunities for us.
Yeah, and you're probably already aware that because there's an SLA available there and enterprise support available, it really helps to check all the boxes, that very long list of boxes around availability and redundancy and security and this type of thing, and performance for the servers. So depending which sort of price bracket your project falls into, they've got sort of really relevant offerings all the way up the scale. And I mean, just to sort of gloss over that in one more level of detail, being a case study, we wanted to sort of show you at least a little bit of what that really means, is that things like the Apache Solr search, which is a much better option than just Drupal's sort of core default search functionality, and and Acquia offer that sort of ready to plug in as an extra feature alongside your hosting, and special arrangements to make that available, which is great. And going into a little bit more detail about that, with Apache Solr, you could actually index an entire multi-site configuration into a single index or into multiple indexes, potentially have it shared so that sites can be showing search results and linking out to each other that way, or you can have them siloed and this type of thing. So, and importantly, the indexing of file attachments of documents, which is sort of a really valuable sort of addition to your search index when it's going right down into documents as well. So, and then moving on, Acquia also offer a set of services called Acquia Insights, which are constantly watching your hosting environment, making sure that it's all running properly, giving you feedback about that. And an example of that would be New Relic. So that's something to maybe check in with your developers about whether they're analysing the hosting environment using New Relic or other tools like it. So, yeah.
One thing I just wanted to note about being able to use something like Acquia for effectively a smaller, Technocrat are 35 people at the moment, but we generally count ourselves as a smaller agency. We're looking to do things more leanly and focus on our core strengths, which is to build Drupal sites. We understand that it's not always possible to use something like Acquia, but when we can, it allows us to really focus on giving the best value. So when you're looking at a company, if you actually are going out to tender and people are pushing for something like Acquia, it's often because it helps them do a better job. It's not purely because they're going to get some kickback from Acquia, although that does happen. But I would like to see more options for these full deployment systems in Australia, and this is really the main one at the moment. So it just puts that in a little bit more context. Is Acquia does help us do a better job.
Yeah, it puts a whole significant section of the offering in a safe place, where they're providing a repeatable service, and they're 100% focused just on the quality of the hosting, and so it's something that we don't have to worry about. And what we focus on is like engaging with their service, understanding it, and utilising it, and getting the best out of their support, and making sure that you're getting value out of that arrangement. So it's sort of connecting the client with their services. So it just works really well. So
does anyone know what, actually, which way shall I ask this? Who doesn't know what Drupal multisite is? No one? So everyone's got some idea. So just speaking about what we want to do with our council is we usually recognise that there's a bunch of microsite requirements that are likely to either already be there or are likely to come up. In the case of Manningham, they already had 2 Drupal sites that had been built by other vendors, but they had no consistency across those Drupal sites. And they had requirements for new Drupal sites, including a very small microsite for a campaign to get rail to go out to the heart of Manningham. The way we approach this is that we recognise that if they look at each of those multi-sites as being a unique requirement for hosting, it can really cause them a lot of problems with their compliance and the costs. Because each of those is going to, effectively everyone is going to pad for government hosting. What we do is we try and find the best of both worlds with Drupal multisite, where effectively we're using a single Acquia hosting solution, and we're trying to take those microsites and we're trying to build them off the same platform. It allows us to reuse patterns, and so we have, say, definitions of content types in the platform, so that if a new site comes onto the platform, you're starting to roll out the same administration theme, the same structure of content types, the names of fields, the way the editing form looks. Where there's multiple ways of doing something in Drupal, the platform will generally have one of those ways, and another vendor or another developer within Technocrat who's building that new site out for Manningham, or if they have internal resourcing, can look at the patterns that are being used on those other sites. So the benefit of having a single code base for all those sites can really play out. It doesn't require that all those sites are hosted on the same hosting, because effectively it's a single repository for the Drupal site. But it allows, so it does allow, say, an individual site in that repository to be hosted somewhere completely different. But you get those patterns, those reused patterns. And in the cases where it can be put on the same platform as the rest of the websites, there's not really any additional cost from Acquia. Over time, there might be aggregate cost from the amount of activity that hosting needs to manage. But for a microsite that might be getting very negligible number of hits a day, it really is just having other pages on their own domain name. Do you have anything else you wanted to say about that?
Yeah, I would like to pick it up from there. The real benefit for us is that then we're working with a known set of code that has got certain qualities that are going to be valuable to all of the projects that client needs in the future, or potentially to all of them. And what we've done is to focus on a sort of a core set of requirements that meet government standards and that are potentially useful in every project, and the ones that actually save the most time in the initial part of the build. So, and that's mainly around the choice of modules and the choice of base themes especially, and the way that we've built those out. We've found then just puts the client in a position where each new site they ask for, it's a much shorter lead-in time, and is much more compliant at the end of the process. And although we'll often just build the first handful of these, and then at that point it's over to the client to continue that process and sort of to do that with us, then it then becomes a kind of a shared benefit. And so, but going back and just looking in a little bit more detail about the way that plays out, what we effectively have there is a single Drupal core, which we would call the platform, and there's like a large collection of modules, and a large part of our work in building that out is actually just in the selection of those modules and making sure that we're using a kind of complementary set of tools, and so I'm making sure that we're using the right versions and that those things join together well. And I guess the kind of example of that comes to mind would be around the choice of editor for the for the WYSIWYG editor and this type of thing, and then the other tools that go together to make these content types work well. So yeah, I think it's going to be actually on one of the next slides where we get to that in a bit more detail.
Do you want to skip?
Yeah. So, yeah, so this is the slide that I would like to go into detail on.
Yep.
Yeah, so what I was kind of getting at there, and I'm starting to look at it in a little bit more detail, is that when you first deploy Drupal, you really just get a page and an article content type, and they're very basic. And there's a lot of work in front of you at that point to get something fully built out. Do you want to pick it up from there?
Yeah, I would like to pick it up. It's actually some interesting patterns that we've started to use for large content, classic content management situations. What we tend to find is that the traditional approach to building out Drupal is to go, okay, I've got my event content type over here, and I've got my profile and my news item, and I've got another content type over here that runs the slideshows, so each slide or the slideshow itself might be a content type. I'm assuming you know what content types are, so ask questions of me later if you want to know more about this. Now, what we started to do is we've started to look at one of the problems, which is we often find there's a lot of overlap, in that someone may post a new news item or post a new event. They want that event to have its own calendar entry, but they also want that event to appear as effectively a news item in the news feed, and they also want that event to start appearing in the slideshow. So what we started to see is how we started to look at how we could effectively reuse content and structure in those situations. So we took a number of those content types which are often implicated in those situations and started to serve those with a single content type. And we started to basically build in workflow for I'm creating a new event and I'm going to tick this box if I want it to also appear in the slideshow, in which case some additional fields might come in. Or I'm going to tick this box if I want it to appear, like if it's also a location, may also be a news item. So I'm writing out filling out this location, but I also want it to actually appear into the news events to say that this location has just appeared for some reason or another. And what we tend to find is that once the editors become accustomed to the flow of that and understanding the way they're thinking about their content, it really saves them a lot of time because they're really reusing all of their content all the time. The main image on the content might be reused in the slideshow or some other thing.
So I think I can pick it up from there.
Yeah.
I guess there's a lot of value in this slide because it's something that myself and in fact like a group of developers have been working on for several years, improving this set of methods, and I feel it really addresses a key sort of issue or a key flaw in a lot of content management systems, including Drupal, which is that it provides you this ability to create separate content types, and the examples being pages and articles and say events and locations and these types of things, and that the separation between those content types can be problematic. And so we're getting down to a fair sort of level of technical detail now, but I think the point is really worth emphasising because there's every chance that you will be directly involved in at least being able to influence or assess or make decisions about or to approve the architecture of the project that's going to get built for you. And what I've noticed is that out of the box, Drupal doesn't really point you towards an elegant set of methods for that. And then looking at a lot of the platforms available, say from large international community of providers building out these platforms, and there's Open Scholar and literally dozens of others, Pressflow and all of these other platforms that you're probably familiar with. I have just found that a lot of them are overdeveloped and overspecified at the level of managing content of different types.
Information architecture.
And so, the value in that slide is really about the idea that content should be able to change type over time. And the classic example of that is something which starts out being an announcement about a forthcoming event, and then becomes an event at the point where the date is announced. And so that creates a classic problem in Drupal, which is that you've created a news item that doesn't have a date field, and then you create an event that does have the date field. They're both trying to describe the same thing. They both describe sort of parts of it, and they ideally link together somehow. But what you end up with is this kind of unnecessary duplication of content. And I think it's really worth sort of emphasising that you can get around a lot of that. And that by having the right sort of architectural decisions in the early stages, your content becomes a lot more fluid and a lot more easily manageable, and you can avoid a lot of this issues, duplication being the key one.
If you're interested from a technical point of view in what fundamentally is going on here, I think that last line sums it up. Remember, even a slide in a slideshow can just be a view mode of a full page. So if you're familiar with view modes, and this is fundamentally how we're handling the treatment of the content in different contexts. And another point in there is that, okay, so I don't want this page to have any event dates, but not putting any dates into the field Drupal doesn't have a problem with that. It's not, unless you want to actually put in really strict workflows, which you can do, and that's probably where the work actually comes in, is where they want to require date fields under certain situations, and we use the conditional field module for that. Yeah, so just a couple of little technical hints there.
Yeah, so to try and summarise on that slide, and I think we're running out of time as well, I guess I would say that, it would be a shame if you spent, so is that our time or something else? No, okay. I guess, so just trying to summarise on that slide, it would be a shame if you spent tens of thousands of dollars on a site that you felt was really solid and had a lot of integrity, and then it turned out that editors were using it to the best of their ability and following the instructions, but ending up with duplicating content and incomplete little bits of content randomly pointing at each other, and this large set, this sort of over-proliferation of items that then become hard to manage. So then, with a particular kind of thinking about just how simple and clean those processes can make a really huge difference to all of those editors' experience for years down the line. So that was the gist of it. If we can just really quickly jump over a few of the other ones, there might be one or two other salient points while we're wrapping up. So I guess that's just an example of how simple the admin interface can be, looking at the administration menu and just how easy that can be for a regular editor. And that's showing just how powerful the content overview screen can be. that's showing the detail in the content material. So, it's okay.
Keep flicking.
Yeah, if we
I
want
assume we've actually out of time.
Oh, we're actually out of time? Okay, cool. We'll leave it there. Sorry if it was a little bit of a nervy start on my part. I guess I was just really looking forward to sharing some of this with you. And sorry we didn't get it sort of twice as long to go into all the rest of the detail. But it really is my first sort of public talk of this kind. And so, it's a step in the right direction for me. And so thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.